Welcome to the part 2 of the Alien series examination. Today we're ready to dive into the 1986 classic. This time, we have James Cameron taking the director role. So the tone of this movie shifts quite a bit from the original one, which is more on the sci-fi, suspense, horror type style of movie. And then you have Aliens, which is more just a flat-out action movie. This time, it's war. So basically, the summary of this movie, Ripley's been found after 57 long years after the first encounter with the original Xenomorph. The company finds her, and they debrief her and basically assume that she's, well, crazy. They have no knowledge of the xenomorph she's speaking of, or nor have they ever encountered it themselves. To make things worse, LV 426 is now a terraforming colony called Hadley's Hope, and wouldn't you know it, absolutely nothing bad happens. You know, nothing bad could happen in this situation. Movie's over. Yeah, not exactly. That's not how things are happening. That would be a disappointing movie. That'd be like if Jurassic Park, the dinosaurs never got loose and people just saw dinosaurs and everything went exactly as planned. Well, the colony begins to lose contact and Ripley's case is starting to look much better. Lieutenant Gorman and Burke confront her about joining them for an investigation which she initially declines. So this plays in big time with Ripley's character development, initially scarred and traumatized by the original Xenomorph's attack. Nightmares, night sweats, she realizes it's time to confront her fear. She's lost her job and missed out on her daughter's life. It's time to confront her fear, and she goes in with a squad of Marines. One thing I absolutely love about this movie that is perfect is the supporting roles appear to be very fleshed out, and each character kind of evolves as the movie progresses. You have Dwayne Hicks, who becomes the leader he is meant to be, Bishop, not initially trusted by Ripley, but he shows his loyalty. Vasquez ends up putting aside her differences with Gorman so they can attempt to survive, if you want to say, and then for that, you have Hudson, who's this Chad energy marine that just ends up losing everything and can't keep it together and ends up dying. Finally, you have Little Newt, who plays an important role developing Ripley by the movie's end. Basically, Newt is the last survivor of the colonists and bonds a mother daughter trust relationship with Ripley. But early on, though, Newt shows fear and a lack of faith in the Marines, which really alarms Ripley because she's seen what the Xenomorph is capable of. She knows the Marines' tech and their guns may not matter, and this mission to find a colonist may be over and doomed from the moment it started. Even with the intel that Ripley has about the Xenomorph, she's still learning about them, just as the viewer is if they're watching this for the first time. So let's talk about the actual Xenomorphs changes in the design. One of the biggest changes was the dome, which was missing, and this was because of the fact that James Cameron didn't want to deal with the dome cracking when shooting the movie, which is pretty understandable. So we got these rigid type skeleton designs, and some of the sexual undertones were dialed back. Some of the suits were blue, some of them were brown also behind the scenes, rather than just a strict black, which was in the original movie. Behind the scenes, James Cameron described his differences with the Xenomorphs, being that his Xenomorphs were actually older than the one that was in the original movie. I think that's kind of a cool theory. Some fans have taken it a bit further and said that the ridged and the domed ones were two different types of xenomorph. You know, it's up to you to formulate what you want to. We don't have an official definition that they're actually different, but I think it'd be cool if it was used in future movies to see both the ridged and smooth-headed ones coexist in one movie. Overall, the creature was dived into much deeper and now operates under a giant queen like an ant or a bee. Some fans love this idea, and it's very widely accepted. Others argue it takes away the mystery because the perception of the original Xenomorph was it acted under its own will without a queen. So our queen is the source of these eggs, and she's the one building the hive that's tearing apart our marines and our colonists. The overall queen is just built up so well also in this movie from the moment that our characters speculate that it might exist to finding it, and seeing the design is something to behold even nearly 40 years later. The overall design was a collab between James Cameron and Stan Winston, who also shares his own legacy. Really, the design itself is just as iconic as the original Alien. Some might kind of argue certain things, but it holds up every viewing and it's just a sight to behold, no matter how many times I watch this movie. The movie paces itself pretty well, and I overall love the sets and the detail, which really rivals the set designs in the original Alien movie. From the gunshots, the weapons, and the movie's soundtrack, it is so memorable. I will point out that I used to consider this my favorite Alien movie of all time, but there's certain parts that haven't aged so well, and I'm going to get into that. So the moment where this gets kind of messy to me is the moment that the Queen boards the dropship. Yeah, we do get our epic battle between the power loader and the Queen. The moment this becomes a stretch, though, is the moment when Ripley is climbing up a ladder. The Queen then grabs onto her leg, and then for that, the door underneath opens up, sucking out all the air, and this causes Ripley to sustain holding on to that ladder while the air is getting sucked out and vacuumed out of the ship and the Queen holds on. It just seems like a stretch, which I'm really sorry. I know it's a movie and I don't need to be overly diving into it. It's just not as magical as, say, the original ending of the first movie. Is it bad that I want to compare this scene to the bus scene on Speed? Overall, it's a satisfying movie that I can watch over and over and over. It's one of those movies also that is one of the most iconic from the 80s, so I can't help but recommend it. If you haven't seen it, sit tight while I get you some popcorn. Neca really went hard when it came to releasing figures from this movie, and it all started with the Xenomorph, released in 2008, predating the actual line. I actually have this figure. It's one of the oldest figures in my Neca collection. Not a bad figure, it's just told oddly in some spots. The actual line began in 2013, and in Series 1 and 2 we were offered two different variations of the Xenomorph, one brown, one blue. Eventually down the line they were given another release, and this time they were billed as Ultimate figures, which was kind of the start of the Ultimate Xenomorphs. This time also too we were added in eggs, a chest burster, and a facehugger just to add more accessories, because a lot of the earlier Xenomorph figures by Neca didn't have any actual accessories, and that was one of the biggest drawbacks. Furthermore, one of my favorite accessories was eventually released, and this was the egg pack, and what was so cool about this is the fact that they packaged it in a literal egg carton. Really cool packaging, one of the most unique and my favorite that NECA has done. I eventually would like to see them release this as like a 12 pack because I'd go all in and get it, to be honest. I love building up my collection of eggs. The queen was the icing on the cake, and I for one remember when this was coming out, it was something that took forever, and I remember it was constantly asked about on Twitter, and NECA kind of kept things under wrap, but eventually it was showed off, and I made sure to get in my pre-order. At the time, I think I spent like $85 on it, and this is because of the fact I was able to get it on discount at a store I worked at called Hastings Entertainment. It's the only queen that I've needed. It's the definitive queen from the best movie she appears in my opinion, and the figure holds up really well. Fully to scale also too is what makes it more interesting compared to say the McFarlane one, which was much smaller. And it really just got better because it didn't end about the Xenomorph. We actually got actual Colonial Marines from this movie. We haven't got them all yet, and we're still crossing our fingers that maybe we can. But the fact that they dived in and went as far as they've gone with the Marines really shows how far NECA wanted to make a fan service for the fans, because McFarlane had only done, to my knowledge, please correct me if I'm wrong, but they only did one Marine, which was Hicks. To date, Hicks, Hudson, Vasquez, and Frost are the only actual Marines from the movie that have been released. More have been demanded by fans, but the issue I think they're facing has got to be the likeness. We were given a Drake and Apon figure, however they didn't have the actual likeness or the actor's face. Ripley was released in multiple different variants as well, one that was released with Newt as kind of an added feature, and Newt did have her own release. I do want to mention she was a 2016 San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, but that really wasn't that available to everybody, so to make her a little bit more widely available, they did release her in that pack with Ripley. To be honest, I'm just shocked that we got this many human figures, because NECA always said, oh, human figures aren't profitable, or they found reasons to just not release certain figures. But hey, we got all this, and I think it's really cool. The accessories they come with are just amazing. Even the fact that we did get an actual accessory kit. The stasis tube set is also worth mentioning, and this is due to the fact that it had LED lights, it had a few facehuggers and chest bursters. I don't think that their facehuggers were released that widely prior to this. This is kind of like a little bit around when the Ultimate figures were coming out. You could take out the top and you could fill it with water if you want to, but I just want to mention as a disclaimer, I do not recommend that you fill this with water. If you're worried about the paint apps on your facehuggers, it may damage it as time goes on, and these have been out for about 5 years, so if you've done this and you've had them in there for 5 years, you may have figured this out. I just wanted to throw that out there. If you do it just kind of for a little photography, feel free to, but make sure you just empty that out and air it out properly, so that way there's no paint damage. There was a power loader that was released that can go with the Queen Alien. I missed out on this, so unfortunately I don't have it to show off more pictures or to show more footage of it. I missed out on all opportunities. It was just there was other things going on, and I just kind of put it at the back of the list and just never got it, unfortunately. Overall, of all the movies, NECA did this movie the most fan service, because you can watch this movie and see almost everything that's been released. Even some of the vehicles have been released in the Cinemachines line that they had. I'd like to see bigger, more scaled versions of those, but I don't think NECA sees them as profitable, and I think that's why that stuff gets overlooked, because people know that they want the Xenomorph more. That's more of a priority than buying like a drop ship, which is going to retail at a price that's going to be much more. Plus, the army building you can do with the aliens, it is just crazy. I've seen people with full sets in their rooms. It's a fun line, and it's virtually unlimited.